support an attack, Israeli attack on Iran if Iran will not have a deal? If Iran will continue with their ballistic missiles and also nuclear weapons?
If they will continue with the missiles, yes. The nuclear, fast. Okay? One will be yes, absolutely. The other was, we'll do it immediately.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is back in the United States for yet another meeting with President Donald Trump. And if you were under the impression that Israel trying to drag the United States into war with Iran was over, you'd sadly be mistaken. All you have to do is have two brain cells to rub together to know that Israel is persistent in demanding what it wants until it gets what it wants. And so here we have President Donald Trump moving the goalposts and including Iran's obtaining missiles as enough of a reason to strike their country. Now, before I give you more details about this meeting and what was said, Cenk, your 2 cents?
Yeah, you couldn't see Netanyahu's left hand there because it was obviously up Trump's ass, and Trump was just saying whatever Netanyahu wanted. We're going to tell you what Netanyahu asked for behind the scenes. It was obvious in what Trump said in front of the scenes, and then we're going to tell you about how Israel is continuing to completely violate Trump's peace plan in several different ways, and Trump is aiding and abetting it because obviously we don't run our own country anymore.
Well, we haven't run our own country for a very long time at this point, but Trump is really good at making it brazen and obvious. So look, it is obvious that Israel wants to pressure the United States into more war with Iran. And Trump makes it clear that, you know what, I'm a willing participant. Take a look.
Now I hear that Iran is trying to build up again, and if they are, we're going to have to knock them down. We'll knock them down, we'll knock the hell out of them, but hopefully that's not happening. I heard Iran wants to make a deal. If they want to make a deal, that's much smarter. You know, they could have made a deal the last time before we went through, a big attack on them, and they decided not to make the deal. They wish they made that deal. So I think, again, they should make a deal. They want to make a deal, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Yeah, please.
Mr. Trump, hi, Nadav Elimelech, I-24 News Israel. Would you support the overthrow of the Iranian regime?
Of who?
Iranian regime.
I'm not going to talk about overthrow of a regime.
Overthrow of the regime in Iran is exactly what Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis want. This isn't really about missiles or nuclear weapons. Now, sure, Israel doesn't want Iran to have nuclear weapons, even though Israel itself is a nuclear power. It has a clandestine nuclear program that, it pretends to keep secret, but everyone knows about, not part of the non-proliferation treaty. Being a nuclear power means that Israel is never really in fear of never existing or having its entire country dismantled. They also have something known as the Samson option, which basically indicates that if anything were to happen to Israel where it would be dismantled, they would use nuclear weapons to basically destroy the globe. That is a literal policy in Israel that we should all know about. But our media, of course, doesn't like to report on it. No, this is about regime change in Iran. It's been about regime change in Iran for decades now. And Israel has been pretty clear about its plans to balkanize Iran, much like it has done with Syria. But Cenk, I'm curious about your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so this is one of 3 main asks that Netanyahu has. The third one was not mentioned afterwards. I'll tell you that in a minute. The first one is perpetual war with Iran. And so before, the excuse was, oh my God, they're about to have nukes. Now you guys have seen on video Netanyahu saying that literally for the last 20 years, pretending it's around the corner. But we bombed their nuclear facilities, and Trump was super proud of bombing their nuclear facilities. So yeah, they tried that every once in a while, and we showed it to you on the show. They'd send out one of their puppet pundits or politicians here in America, and they'd be like, well, Iran nukes. And that didn't work. The right wing was like, we already bombed their nuclear facilities, and Trump already said it's totally destroyed, so move on. So now they went to, what we're really concerned about is ballistic missiles. Unlike all other countries on earth, Iran should not be allowed to have any missiles. They shouldn't be allowed to have any weapons at all. In fact, until every Iranian is groveling at the feet of the Israelis, that we should just keep bombing them, and bombing them endlessly. So is that the real motivation? Well, sure, they want to neuter Iran and absolutely destroy all of their neighbors because they view everyone on planet Earth as a threat. Oh my God, they're all anti-Semites, they're all gonna kill us, we have to murder them first. So that is a huge part of it. But the bottom line, the most important thing is what Anna mentioned. We're gonna keep going, guys. America is going to be forced to do whatever Israel demands, and you've now seen it with your own eyes. You saw it in Iraq, you're seeing it in Iran unfold day by day. Why do they want regime change? Why is not bombing their nukes, their missiles, etc.? None of it is ever good enough for Israel. Because what they're doing is systematically toppling every regime that would help the Palestinians or any other Arab countries in the area. And now Iran is a Persian country, but they have helped the Palestinians resist. They've helped other Hamas, Hezbollah, etc. All these things that Israel considers unacceptable. You must all bow your heads to Israel. You must all do as you're told. And so they've replaced the leaders of so many of those Middle Eastern countries. So tons of them actually work for Israel. They don't work for their own citizens. And Iran is their top target now. Before, Iraq was their top target, so we were forced to do regime change against Saddam Hussein. Gaddafi was a target, so we were forced to do regime change. It has greatly destabilized both of those nations, cost us thousands of American citizens dead, trillions of dollars on the so-called global war on terror. It's actually a global war on Israel's enemies. And now they're saying, no, we have to have regime change. And we have to have a puppet installed as the leader of Iran who actually works for Israel. Otherwise, we're never satisfied. And we can't do that on our own because it requires ground troops, it requires a ton. Iran is 4 times the size of Iraq. It might require trillions of dollars. So Trump, come here, boy. Tell them you're gonna attack Iran the minute I tell you to. And you just saw it on tape. You saw Trump saying, well, if they have missiles, definitely we're gonna attack them. If they have nukes, we attack them immediately. But under all circumstances, we attack on behalf of Israel. So he's a dog for Israel, doesn't work for America. But to be fair, if Biden was in his place or Kamala Harris was in his place, they would do the same exact thing because almost all of our politicians are obviously empirically owned by Israel.
And when it comes to the question of certain nefarious forces that destabilize the Middle East or lead to terror, I would say that the real threat in that region is Israel, the country that's bombing multiple sovereign countries right now as we speak, the country that is obsessed with overthrowing leaders in various countries and installing puppet regimes that will do its bidding. I think at this point, considering how much insane restraint Iran has shown after the United States had struck its nuclear sites, I feel far more comfortable with a country like Iran having ballistic missiles as opposed to us providing Israel with all of the military weaponry we've been providing them for decades now. But other issues came up during this press conference, including President Donald Trump's public demand that Benjamin Netanyahu be pardoned from his now numerous corruption scandals in the country of Israel. The president of Israel, Isaac Herzog, has been asked to do this pardon, and Netanyahu has actually formally asked for the pardon. Now, Trump was asked about this, and I'm gonna show you what he had to say, but I also want to make it abundantly clear that our team decided to use, we have cut in footage and imagery of Gaza to juxtapose the statements you're hearing from the president. Take a look.
Can you tell me a little bit about your relationship with Prime Minister Netanyahu and how important it is for you to see him be pardoned by the Israeli president?
Look, he's a wartime prime minister. He's done a phenomenal job. He's taken Israel through a very dangerous period of trauma. Israel with other people might not exist right now, if you want to know the truth. That's a pretty big statement, but it's true. I feel that. You had the wrong prime minister. Israel right now would not exist because they were met with a force the likes of which very few countries could have handled, and we worked together and we were extremely victorious, to put it mildly. He's a wartime prime minister who's a hero. How do you not give a pardon? You know, I think it's a very hard thing not to do it. I spoke to the president, and it's on. I mean, he tells me it's on its way.
Our president declared that a genocidal, corrupt scumbag, Benjamin Netanyahu, is a wartime president, a hero. As we all just saw imagery out of Gaza, showing an enclave that no longer exists. You want to talk about, Israel might not have existed after, what happened on October 7th? Really? Does Gaza exist right now? Do the residential homes exist? Do the universities exist? Do the hospitals exist? Do the refugee camps exist?
Yeah.
No, it is a stain on this nation's history that we are aligned with a country as disgusting and genocidal as Israel.
Yeah, so this, I missed an issue. You're right. There's actually 4 different issues. One was not talked about. I'll get to that in a second. Second one, third one we're about to get to. But this one is personal for Netanyahu. Netanyahu wants to pardon, and so he wants to use his puppet Trump to pressure inside Israel. Because inside Israel, he actually does not have total control. There's a lot of different factions within Israel, etc. He has total control here in America. So he makes the American president say to his Israeli audience, now remember everybody, you should pardon Netanyahu, and Netanyahu is a wartime hero. Without him, Israel would not have existed after October 7th. Really? Without Netanyahu, the IDF would be so incompetent that they would let a handful of Hamas fighters just keep going and going and going and just take over all of Israel? That IDF is that weak? I mean, that's a preposterous statement. In fact, of course, Netanyahu in some ways funded Hamas. It takes about 45 minutes to get across Israel in a helicopter. It took about 6 hours for the main troops to respond, 7 hours. Netanyahu, at a best case scenario, was deeply incompetent in allowing October 7th to happen when they had intelligence that it was definitely going to happen. And they just somehow couldn't get there for hours and hours and hours and hours. At a bare minimum, deeply incompetent, but now a hero that saved Israel. Somehow they couldn't use their nukes, they couldn't use Iron Dome, they couldn't use anything. And they would have been wiped out without Netanyahu. That is Trump just getting right between Netanyahu's cheeks and going, I'll humiliate all of America, and I'll do anything, I'll say anything, no matter how preposterous. No matter how absurd, I'll get you out of any jam, no matter how corrupt you are. In fact, it's not a matter of no matter how corrupt you are. He's like, you're corrupt too? I love it, I love it. I love this corrupt guy who murders Palestinians with our money and starts wars with our money and our troops. Yeah, get on your hands between the cheeks. So that's Trump, so that's 2 for 2 right now. By the way, he says to the Iranians, what? You should make a deal right away. They didn't make a deal last time. We told them to make a deal last time. When they showed up to the negotiations, we bombed their country. We were lying. We weren't trying to make a deal. That's been reported after the fact. We were lying to the Iranians on purpose to please the Israelis, and we surprise attacked them. And then the Israelis murdered their peace negotiators. Because the Israelis almost always murder peace negotiators because they don't want peace, they want perpetual war financed and fought by America on their behalf. They're not an ally. They think we're a bunch of suckers, which leads us to issue number 3, where are they gonna keep Gaza? Of course they're gonna keep the 53% they're in. Now, in fact, they're expanding the percentage and they're continue to devastate Gaza, as Anna is about to tell you.
So I want to talk a little bit about what has transpired in Gaza since the so-called ceasefire. And I say so-called ceasefire because while it is true that Hamas has decided to stick to the terms of the ceasefire, Israel clearly has not. In fact, since October 10th, when the ceasefire was put into place, 414 Palestinians at least have been killed by the IDF, which seems to indicate that, the slaughter continues. Another 1,142 individuals have been wounded as the result of the IDF's military activity in Gaza post-ceasefire agreement. According to the Palestinian Chronicle, the office said in a statement that Israeli violations have included 298 incidents of direct gunfire against civilians, unsurprising, 54 military incursions into residential areas, also unsurprising, and 455 bombing and targeting operations against people and their homes. Now, Israeli forces also carried out 162 acts of destruction and bombardment targeting homes, institutions, and civilian buildings. The most surprising thing about all of this is that there's anything left to bomb, but apparently there is, and the IDF is bombing it, alongside 45 cases of unlawful arrest during the ceasefire period. That's a euphemistic way of saying taking Palestinian hostages, which Israel is known to do. It's just that they refer to them as prisoners as opposed to hostages. And while the headline is about the barbarism, this headline that I'm about to show you is about the barbarism of the IDF in the West Bank. I think this gives us an example of how far they'll go to slaughter innocent people. This was reported by Israeli publication Haaretz. They say that a Palestinian teen left his friend's funeral shortly after he was shot dead too. I'm sure the teenager posed a real national security risk to the Israelis, right?
Yeah. So Anna, if the Palestinians had killed 414 Israelis since the ceasefire, of course, everybody would have said the ceasefire is over. That's, oh my God, that's a third of October 7th, the greatest calamity known to man. Now you say, oh Jay, you can't say that about October 7th. It sounds like you're being sarcastic. I am being sarcastic. October 7th was terrible, but Israel does one October 7th after another, after another, after another. In fact, they've done over 70 in Gaza, and our press doesn't give a damn. Our press thinks, yeah, but those are just Palestinians. Their lives are irrelevant. They're not precious Israeli lives. So 414 Israelis had been killed. We all know it would have been declared at least a third of a Holocaust, because October 7th was declared the new Holocaust. So, and then of course, 40,000 Palestinians more would have been murdered, right? Because Israeli lives matter and no one else does, according to American press and American politicians. So all those dead Palestinians, Israel has taken 53% of Gaza, has now set up permanent roads, infrastructure and building. They've already begun to do that. They've wiped out everything the Palestinians own in the 53% that they control. They've now started to slowly increase to 53%. They're now taking physical yellow objects and moving them on the land and saying, now if you cross here, we'll murder you on the spot because we're a terrorist government and a terrorist army. We murder civilians on the spot, no questions asked, on a regular basis. That's what Israel's doing today, because they're a terrorist country. And so they're never gonna give that 53% back unless massive world change happens and a change in America happens. And then people will say, oh, all the Israeli first liars will come out and go, oh, we had to take the land. It was for self-defense. It was for security reasons. And by the way, we have a plan to move at least 1 million Gazans out, which is a story we'll get to later. And we'll take even more of Gaza and more of the West Bank. And we'll get our liars in American press to tell you we're doing self-defense and we're the poor little victims as we slaughter Palestinians over and over, hundreds at a time, thousands, tens of thousands at a time. But then American press, like the dogs that they are, will call the poor Palestinians the terrorists and the violent ones with the violent religion. And if you criticize Israel, they'll call you an anti-Semite. They'll try to ruin your life because a bunch of thugs, Israel first thugs, run the press, mainstream press, but not the rest of the press. 94% of Congress, I say empirical because they literally donate to 94% of Congress, massive sums of money, hundreds of millions of dollars. And our press says that is true, but if you report the truth, we'll try to get you fired from the news business by calling you names and trying to cancel you, because no one is allowed to dissent from beloved Israel. All bow your heads, murder away, okay? Here's more gobs of money to kill more Palestinians.
Yes. So in response to everything you just said, Israel is a terrorist state run by a terrorist regime, and anyone who has a problem with me saying it can go ahead and suck it.
So I promised you guys a fourth thing that Netanyahu is asking for that they didn't talk about afterwards, and the fourth item is a 20-year memorandum of understanding that is going to be worth between 80 and 100 billion dollars. So since Israel hasn't stolen enough money from us, they've already taken over $300 billion from us, pretending to be a special ally. That's just a nonsense talking point for, hey, shut up and give me your money, otherwise I'll call you an anti-Semite and try to destroy your life, right? And they've been doing this for decade after decade. They say the 300 billion that American taxpayers have given them, not enough. You owe Israel more. So They're now trying to get about $100 billion guaranteed to them over the next 20 years. And if anyone dares object, obviously all of news and politicians, our representatives will come down on you like a ton of bricks, call you an anti-Semite, try to get you fired from whatever job you're in, and say no one's allowed to object. Hand over your wallets. And so if you don't believe us on any of this, and you say, oh well, I heard on mainstream media that that's not true. I hear that Israel has this Judeo-Christian heritage, and we owe them all of our money. We owe them. You guys sound like you don't like Israel and you're biased, and that's what the real problem is. Okay, let's find out who's right and who's wrong. Look up and see how much of Congress that they have funded. Look up and see how much the Israeli lobby has spent. They have in fact spent over the years hundreds of millions of dollars. And in the last election cycle, they spent more than any other lobby, $100 million. Just in the one cycle alone, they have given to 94% of Congress. And you see our establishment media with your own eyes. They see 1,200 people killed in Israel, and they rightfully say that is a horrific tragedy. They see 70,000 butchered in Gaza. They go, no, who cares? That's self-defense. Shut up, Palestinians. Shut up, you stupid Americans. Give Israel more money. Is there a single person in mainstream press objecting to the $100 billion robbery they're planning right now? I don't see it. Is there anybody objecting? Hey, what the hell? They just stole half of Gaza. Literally right in front of our eyes, they stole half of Gaza. No. Shush. Otherwise, we'll destroy you. By the way, Israel doesn't control America. Hilarious. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.